There we go. Welcome, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Mr. Joseph Loy from the Prince Eagles Academy and a very distinguished and eminent panel of speakers for today. Singapore is one of the leading countries in education worldwide. I am very grateful on behalf of all your audience for your contributions to our segment. I have been very lucky to visit Singapore several times and work with the Principals Academy. It's always a joy. It's a wonderful learning experience. And I have no doubt that those of you who are joining us either live today or in the future watching the stream will derive a fantastic learning experience. So without further ado, Joseph, we are all yours. And thank you very much, both to yourself and all of the speakers tonight.
Thank you, Gabriel. Hi, a very good morning to everyone joining us on the YouTube live stream. My name is Joseph Loy from the Principals Academy in Singapore. Welcome to the Singapore segment of 24 Hours for Change. In this segment, we're pleased to feature three Singapore-based speakers who will be sharing insights on special educational needs, brain-based learning, and designing future-ready curriculum. The first speaker is Mr. Simon Reynolds, who will be speaking on supporting learners with special educational needs towards an inclusive future. Mr. Reynolds is a senior consultant at the Principals Academy with expertise in curriculum development and implementation, pedagogy and assessment, as well as special education. He was a deputy director at the Curriculum Planning and Development Division of the Singapore Ministry of Education for 11 years, working on curriculum development and effective curriculum implementation through appropriate pedagogy and assessment. He is also a part-time lecturer and practicum supervisor at the Singapore National Institute of Education. Well, without further ado, I'll pass the time over to Mr. Simon Reynolds. Mr. Simon Reynolds, over to you.
Thank you, Joseph. Just as I set up my slides. Okay. Hello, everybody. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here. I think this is a wonderful event. I'm very pushed for time, so I will get straight into it. Over the last 6 years, I've developed a great passion for special needs education, and there is a lot that we need to do in this area in Singapore, and I imagine in many, many other countries. So we're talking about inclusion here. Let's start by defining it. There's many definitions, but I think one that I thought was simple, that caught my eye, is all students, whatever their abilities or backgrounds, but we're not really focused on this, on backgrounds today, learn together in the same classrooms and are fully supported to take part in all school activities. So that's what inclusion is that everybody is together, everybody is fully supported, regardless of their abilities. And that's a wonderful ideal, but a long way we have to go to get there. Now, the most common special educational needs, there are many, and variations across regions exist because of diagnostic criteria and detection methods change. But the three most common are dyslexia, which has a global average ranging from 5 to 10%, ADHD or ADD. ADD is just without the hyperactivity. Somebody may be daydreaming if you're not so familiar with the term. Attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, if anybody's unsure what the acronym stands for, that has a global average between 8 to 12%. And lastly, autism. Now, there's a huge variation in the global average, so I'm putting it about 1 to 3% with a question mark. It shows a great variation amongst countries. US and UK have estimated around 3.2 students for when they're aged about 8 years. Australia says 3 to 4%. Southeast Asia said 0.6%, likely to be underestimated. In Singapore, we would say 1%. Which is, I think, a fair number, but it's really hard to say because of different diagnostic criteria and the way it's detected. There are the references. Didn't pull that out of a hat. Now, how do we create an inclusive school culture? I mean, in 20 minutes, I'm going to highlight just 3 changes. Many students with special educational needs will not be formally diagnosed. Sometimes parents don't want them diagnosed. Sometimes they simply don't have the opportunity or access to be diagnosed, but this is very, very common. So just because somebody's not diagnosed, it doesn't mean they don't have a special educational need. Next, not all systems have ready access to what's called allied health professionals. This is speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, or psychologists. In Singapore, we need far more of these, and in some countries there may be adequate supplies. In other countries, there may be very limited supplies. So this is a challenge. And most teachers, perhaps many, are not trained in special educational needs. So, and they usually have two of the biggest expectations are that teachers have to produce results. The expectation to produce results is a huge pressure on teacher, and behavioral management is also generally the biggest concern. So these are the three key challenges with special educational needs. How do we create a truly inclusive school culture? It begins with values. All educators must commit fully to the beliefs, not pay lip service. You've got to believe in their hearts that every child can learn when given appropriate support. Next, every child deserves equal respect to be fully included in all aspects of school life and given the support that meets their particular needs. These are ideals, but I think they are essential educational ideals, and teachers throughout the school must embrace them if we're going to develop a truly inclusive school culture. And the values, to do this, you've got to make them explicit in the school vision, that the school has them at the center at what the school's about. And that's got to involve all stakeholders, school leaders, the school staff. All the students must believe in this, and so must the families of students. And these values must be infused into school policy statements and explicitly implemented in strategic planning. Sometimes we encounter schools that have this said, but you don't see the concrete strategies quite yet in place. That's very, very important. Implementation, of course, has to be practical. It can only work within the current resources and constraints of the school. The important thing that you have beliefs and values in inclusion, and it's turned into solid action. Now, what makes a truly inclusive school culture is living these values. Safety and a welcoming environment. There is so much evidence that making a child feel safe from the youngest age, from birth onwards, hugely influences the effectiveness of learning. Children need to feel safe throughout birth, right through their school career. And the way this is best achieved is using a framework called Developing Positive Behavior Interventions and Support. It's well known. I imagine a lot of people are familiar with it. If you're not familiar with it, there is a lot of material on the lines, and it emphasizes positive, specific expectations of appropriate behavior. It emphasizes what to do, what we should do, what's appropriate behavior. It doesn't emphasize not. It's not about what not to do. It's not punitive. So it emphasizes the need to set what is appropriate behavior, what is the desired behavior we want over punitive discipline. And in creating these expectations, we should involve students as much as possible. Again, it's overwhelming evidence to support the fact that any group of people, if they are involved in the rules and the processes that govern them, if they have a say in creating them, they're far more likely to follow these. And another aspect, it's got to cover proactive strategies to stop bullying. This can be socialization, verbal, physical, or online abuse. Bullying happens, and often teachers are not aware of it because it takes place beyond. I mean, people aren't going to bully students in front of teachers. So we need action against that. What students need support? Once we got our values in place and we have a positive system of behavioral expectations, what students need support? We have to identify them. And this has got to be a systematic process for identifying students. Sometimes we see it's left to individual teachers' opinions, and these can be well meant, but often aren't very accurate. And it's not a case of if they have a diagnosis, remember, but do they face learning difficulties which require extra help? And we support every student, not because of the diagnosis or lack of it. We support every student who has a need. And the first step, once we've identified the student, is build a holistic record, not just about their struggles. We want to look at their strengths, interests, and preferences, how they interact socially at school, their learning strengths and challenges, their behavioral strengths and challenges. Don't just focus on their challenges, look at their strengths as well. Any relevant medical information and any relevant family information. We need a lot of information about the individual child who requires extra help. Okay, we've got our information. We've identified our students. We need a school systemic process. Now, the one that is most known, again, I imagine a lot of people will be familiar with it. Again, there's a lot online, if you're not, is the MTSS, Multi-Tiered System of Support. It's a school-wide systematic process for the identification of students with SEN and defining and providing the needed level of support. Level 1, sorry, go straight to level 2, but never mind, core pedagogies and PBIS. You have evidence-based pedagogies that will enable all students to learn, and you have a PBIS system, behavioral expectations and rule, which encourage desired behavior, and they apply to all students. So the idea is they're effective for as many students as possible, so we reduce the need for students requiring extra support. Then in most, we will have another system of early targeted support. Students may have extra lessons, they may receive extra help. The general consensus is about 15% of students. And at the very last, we take in those that require targeted support. These are students with really difficult or demanding challenges who really are probably going to need one-on-one training, referrals to specialists. So this system needs to be in place, and there needs to be objective data-based criteria for placing them. And it's got to be in sustainable numbers. Ideally, we try to support most students at Tier 1 through effective pedagogies and a very, very effective system for encouraging appropriate behavior. We want to reduce the numbers at Tier 2 and Tier 3. So we have an MTS at place. The other crucial factor, once we know who our students are who require extra help, our students with SEN, you've got to build a partnership with parents. Parents, caregivers, working with the schools and intervention strategies. This is going to be the single most powerful agent of change. Building this effective relationship, working with parents, is so important. And you want to build this strong relationship with the parent caregiver as early as possible. And you want to talk about their child's strengths and progress. No parent wants to hear you teachers complaining about their child all the time and only be contacted when there's a problem. You want to establish them early, you want to have regular reports, and you want to show that you care about the child, and you see the child as an individual. Again, so start building that relationship from the get-go. Don't wait just when problems arise. And it needs to be systematic. You need to have communication channels and boundaries in place for both the teachers and the families, a singular point of regular contact. Otherwise, things get confused. This might be a class teacher or civics tutor or home room teacher, whatever works in your system. Agreed communication channels and boundaries. Sometimes it might be something like WhatsApp. Sometimes it might be through email, but you need to agree from this at the beginning, and boundaries. Like if it's WhatsApp, no teacher can be WhatsApped at 10 o'clock at night and the parent expects a reply till the following day. And how often are you going to communicate? Have a schedule in place so that communication is regular on a basis that works for both teachers and families. And the first step is to listen. Listen. And this is actually quite difficult, but you need to listen to the parents givers as the expert on the child, understand their needs and concerns. They will have a lot to say. You have to be culturally sensitive. And you explain how you can support them, not how they should support you. You have to build a relationship of trust where the parents feel safe. We're back to the safety issue again. The next area is teacher belief and practice. Teacher belief and perceptions of students with SEN is directly connected to their effectiveness and competence in managing students with SEN. So teachers have to understand that a lot of the students with SEN, it's not a case that they will not do, they cannot do. And you've got to give them empathetic and experiential understanding of the world through the eyes of students with dyslexia, ADHD, and ASD, and other challenges. This is something you need somebody who really knows these students to train the staff, not tell them, but give them experiences where they can begin to see the world a little bit through the eyes of children who have special educational needs. And you have to be flexible. Teachers need to be flexible and adaptive within boundaries as to normative class behavior. I'll give one example. Teachers often get upset if a student's walking around. In one class I was working with, a student with ADHD, we said, let the student take a walking break at the back of the class, and that's fine. Once the teacher relaxed and allowed that, the student was functioning much better at class, and the teacher reduced the stress, and the other students soon adapted to the idea. So we have to be a little bit flexible. Of course, things like aggression remain a complete no-no. You need to survey teachers. You have to get teachers, if you're going to get them on board, you have to understand their challenges. So you have to find out what those are. And I would say a simple survey is the best way to go. And then once you know what the common challenges are, you need to develop strategies. A common one is dealing with meltdowns. For people who are not familiar with this, that's very scary and people don't know what to do. So they need to be trained. This is what you do if there's a meltdown. They will feel more confident, they will feel less stressed out, and they will be more effective. So you train them in strategies that address the problems they face. And when you're training teachers, it needs to be very basic level of training that they can work into their lessons. It should be part of their profession, not something they do an extra. It's got to be a core part of their professional development. It is best done at the small group level. Talking to whole staff is an incredibly ineffective way of training teachers. And when you're training them, you should follow the behavior skills training BST model, where you describe, you then model, you get the teachers to rehearse it, and you give them feedback. This can be done in 30-minute sessions if somebody is experienced and familiar with this. Again, the behavior skills training model, lots of material online if you're not familiar with it. But teachers need to be trained, not told. And we want to see a move away from intuition-based, where teachers are guessing, to evidence-informed strategies. Now, what are evidence-informed strategies? Well, teacher belief and practice. The evidence-informed strategies that work with SEN work for all students. I love this cartoon where you see the snowman is clearing the steps and the young man in the wheelchair says, if you clear the ramp, you clear it for everybody. That is real inclusion. And so the strategies that work for SEN are effective pedagogies for everybody. They will make the teacher a better teacher for everyone. Now, no time in this to go on. I do strongly recommend this book. Disclaimer, I have never met David Mitchell. I do not get a commission for this. And I said I have no personal involvement with it at all. But it is an excellent book because it summarizes all the evidence-based strategies that work. And it was about 80 Singapore dollars when I bought it. It really is worth getting. But I say I get no commission. It's totally unaware I'm recommending it. But that will have the strategies. So, favorable staff attitudes towards students with SEN come from when they are effective. If a teacher is effective with the child, their self-belief grows and they become more confident and less stressed. And the only way for them to do this is through practical experience. They have to be guided using evidence-based strategies. And once they develop this practical expertise through time and practice, they can begin to monitor others and learning. That's what we need to create. And so we want to create a critical mass of teachers with practical expertise. So that's a very quick bird's eye view of this. If anybody who ever wants to contact me, there's my email address. And I hope that at least gives you a very quick overview how we should go about developing inclusion for students with special educational needs. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope this has been provided some insights. Thank you. Over to you, Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds, for the insightful talk. Yeah, next, we have now Professor Ming Hua, who will be speaking on brain-based learning, developing higher order thinking skills in the AI era. Professor Ming Hua was the Deputy President of the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. He was the founding Dean of the College of Engineering at NTU. A globally recognized engineering educator and innovator, Professor has published over 266 research papers, led 49 million Singapore dollars in funded research, and holds 5 patents. Professor Er's career represents a masterclass in the integration of leadership, vision, and pedagogical innovation. Without further ado, I'll pass the time over to Professor Ming Hua.
Thank you, Joseph, for your very kind introduction. A very good day, my fellow educators. Thank you all for joining the 24 Hours for Change in Education, the Singapore session. I'm Professor Ming Hua from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. It is really my great pleasure to speak to you on the important topics of brain-based learning, developing higher order thinking skill in the AI era. Now, let me launch my slide before I go on. I hope all of you can see the slide clearly. Okay, we are gathered here today at a time when education is facing one of the biggest shifts. Artificial intelligence is actually changing the way our students learn, work, and even think. But here is the exciting part. The human brain is still the most powerful learning engine we know. And when we, as educators, understand how it learns best, we can then help our students to go far beyond memorizing facts to truly thinking, creating, and solving problems in the way AI cannot. So this is what we are here to explore together, how brain-based learning can help us unlock higher order thinking skills. So our students don't just survive in the age of AI, they thrive in it. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I will take you through on the journey into how the brain learns, both consciously and unconsciously, and why emotions and meanings are key to deep learning, and most importantly, how we can actually translate these insights into practical strategies for developing higher order thinking skills in our classroom. So that is the topics of my talk today. Now, so there are three key components here. One is the brain-based learning, one is a higher order thinking skill, one is in the AI era. Now, let me speak about this higher order thinking skill, right? Why is it so important about higher order thinking skill? Well, we know that it is very critical for the AI era because higher order thinkings are essential as AI automates routine tasks. In fact, many people think that AI is a tool, but it's actually more than just a tool. AI is actually a new cognitive infrastructure. And in order for us to really harness the maximum benefit of AI, being human, we have to be better than AI in terms of thinking skill. So therefore, this is very essential that we help our students to develop this higher order thinking skill. And second is actually that the future ready skill, adaptability and innovations are crucial for emerging job markets. And therefore, the teaching method must actually adapt to developing these skills actually effectively. Now, these are the top 10 skills actually identified by the World Economic Forum for 2025. It is interesting that if you look at these top 10 skills identified, they comprise analytical thinking and innovation, complex problem solving, critical thinking and analysis, creativity, originality, and initiative. Leadership and social influence, technology use, monitoring and control, technology design and programming, resilience, stress tolerance and flexibility, and reasoning, problem solving, and ideation. Okay. In fact, all this, they are essentially higher order thinking skill, a subset of higher order thinking skill. And it is most interesting that for the first time, the World Economic Forum has identified active learning and learning strategies as one of the top 10 skills that we really have to pay attention to. And when I talk about higher order thinking skill, I'm actually making reference to the Bloom taxonomy. We know that Bloom taxonomy, we have actually 6 levels of skill, and from remembering to understanding to applying, and to the higher top 3 level, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So the higher order thinkings are essentially, I'm referring to the top 3 level of the Bloom taxonomy. And in order for higher order thinking skill to take place, the researchers actually found that actually there are 3 important key components. One is actually that you must have a deep understanding of the domain knowledge. Okay, so this is actually beyond memorization. Students have a grasp principle and patterns. Okay, this is very important. Deep understanding of the domain knowledge. Second is actually processing skill, right? Ability to gather information, evaluate, and actually synthesize information. And the third component is very important, which is what we call the reflective disposition. That means the power of pause, the resist hasty conclusion, and automation bias. So this ability to pause, not to jump to conclusion too quickly, is actually a very important component of a higher order thinking skill. In fact, in this respect, I would say that artificial intelligence does not really have this higher order thinking skill, because sometimes it actually produces answers and result which are actually biased and things like that. Okay, so this the three key components of higher order thinking skill, and I think developing deep understanding of the domain knowledge is one of the very, very important. And you find that later part, using the brain-based learning pedagogy, we can really engage students in this deep learning. I think that's the whole gist of this brain-based learning pedagogy. Now, if you look at the evolution of instructional approaches, okay, the direct instruction method that is commonly used at the moment, I would say that this was actually done through the industry age, right? Where teachers actually act as like expert transmitter, and students role just a passive receiver, sitting in the class, listening to this one-way kind of instruction. You find that this kind of method is really low order. It doesn't just remembering, understanding. It doesn't really exercise the higher order thinking part, okay? So the instructional method, we are actually approaching to moving to more project-based and problem-based learning. These are actually quite commonly used nowadays in some schools and even university, whereby the teacher's role will be like a facilitator, and the learner role will be active explorer. Okay, explorer. In this case, you find that there's a mid to high level order of like applying, analyzing, and so on. Okay. And the highest level is really what we call the guided experience approach, okay, whereby the mentors, the teachers, or industry expert, they actually actively guiding the learners through complex tasks, real world challenges, and reflective thinking process. So in this case, you find that the teacher, the mentor, and all that, they are like a coach and co-learner, and learner, they are acting like a co-constructor. So in this case, you have a full spectrum of higher order thinkings happening, evaluating, creating, and analyzing. I think this is exactly what we are trying to do, try to move towards more from just a direct instruction method towards this project-based learning and to the highest level of guided experience approach in our teaching and learning. Now, there are 12 principles of brain-based learning, which I would not have time to go into very much detail. In fact, these 12 principles of brain-based learning, they were published originally in a paper. Title is Understanding a Brain-Based Approach to Learning and Teaching by two authors, Renata Kane and Jeffrey Kane, in the Educational Leadership in 1990. Okay. The Renata Kane she was actually the associate professor with the School of Education, California State University. Now, this 12 principle actually outline the essential part of how actually the brain learns. Okay, so it actually ranges from brain is a parallel processor to learning engages the entire physiology. To search for meaning is innate. Search for meaning occurs through patterning. And emotions are very critical to patterning. And every brain actually simultaneously perceive and create parts and whole. At the same time, learning involves both focus, attention, and peripheral perception. And all the way to the last principle, number 12, is that every brain is actually uniquely organized. Okay, every brain is different. So what it means is actually that, when you have a class of 30 students or 100 students in a class, every student come with them with a different, what we call the prior knowledge, because I think through their learning processes, the neuron are wired differently. Okay, and the number 11 is also very important, that the learning is actually enhanced by challenge but inhibited by threat. So this ability to create a safe and friendly environment to facilitate the brain to learn effectively is actually extremely important. So when the brain is actually a parallel processor, then I think we have to, educators like us, we have to try to make full use of all this like audio visual kind of media to really bring the materials across, you know, to facilitate the brain to learn effectively. And there are really three fundamental elements of great teaching. The first one is actually what we call relaxed alertness. In other words, if the learning environment is actually very relaxing, at the same time, it's also challenging, then you find that the brain can really learn in a very comfortable way, right? And I think this whole thing about creating a safe and a friendly environment in the school is actually extremely important in the classroom, right? So creating an optimum climate for learning is actually important. Secondly, we must also orchestrate immersion in complex experience. So in other words, creating optimum opportunity for learning. So therefore, these things like project-based or experiential learning and so on, these are really wonderful kind of opportunity for students to really immerse in this learning kind of environment. And the third component is actually active processing of experience. So we must also create optimum ways for students to reflect, for students to consolidate the learning. Okay, so these are the three components, the key components for great teaching. And I think for any of our teaching activities, we should try to incorporate these three components as much as possible. And the brain-based learning strategy essentially is that the brain is actually a neuroplasticity. In other words, the brain ability to rewire and actually adapt through learning experiences. Okay, and emotion is actually very important. All right, emotion engagement. How do we leverage emotion to enhance memory and also the cognitive performance? And the third one is actually active learning. In fact, as I mentioned, the World Economic Forum has even identified that active learning is one of the top 10 top skill in 2025. All right, so we should really promote hands-on experiential learning to engage students in this deep learning. Okay, and let me explain very briefly how the brain learns. Okay, essentially, you find that information coming in through our various senses, and then the brain is a parallel processor. So the brain will be actually engaging in this multiple sensor information coming in, and then the information will be actually channeled to what we call the prefrontal cortex here. We use a term called working memory, and so what the brain is trying to do is actually that you're trying to make sense of this new piece of information coming in by actually recalling from the long-term memory, right? So there's an interaction between the new information coming in and the long-term memory that whether the student learned beforehand, okay? So if there's a connection here, then you find that there'll be a memory formation, all right? And the memory formation will, this new piece of information can then be stored back to the long-term memory, right? And I think through repeated exposure and emotional significance, actually strengthen the memory pathway. And then once information is stored in the long-term memory, we must have ability to actually recall. So the retrieval is actually very, very important, right? Store information is retrieved and then applied to the new situation. So what the brain-based learning pedagogy is essentially try to facilitate all this to take place, right? And in a very engaged manner. So active learning strategy, I think many of the educators are aware about all this already. For example, like inquiry-based learning, students explore question and find solution independently. Problem-based learning, real-world problem, drive really the learning process. Pre-classroom is actually a new kind of teaching pedagogy whereby the content can be actually studied beforehand because you can use technology to record the lecture and all that, put it in the nice bite-sized kind of content. And students come to the class, they will do a group discussion, right? And I think the best way to learn is actually for students to teach each other, through the discussion process. And then also case-based learning is actually also widely used. student analyze and discuss a real life kind of scenario. Okay, so these are some of the strategy that actually we can really use to promote this active learning. And emotion is actually very, very important. Emotional engagement and social learning. Positive emotion, especially when you create an environment whereby students feel very safe, this so-called relaxed alertness. You cannot be too relaxed. The brain needs to be challenged. At the same time, you cannot be over-challenging, because it's over-challenging, then the brain is actually, the hippocampus is actually turned into under stress, and you will not be functioning. Okay, so when we create positive emotion, you enhance retention and also cognitive performance. Social interaction is very important. Peer discussion, collaborative problem solving will boost understanding. And then real-world connection, these are very, very important, linking to learning to personal experience, because once you can link the content to their prior knowledge, their personal kind of experiences, you find that that will increase the relevance and engagement. And I think technology in brain-based learning is extremely important, especially now with AI, okay? AI in education. Many educators are now trying to, or even schools and systems are trying to embrace AI in education. But I would say that we have to really get our educators to be trained to understand the brain-based learning pedagogy. And then we can then combine brain-based learning plus AI. I think we can really reshape the learning outcome, in this very challenging world moving forward in the AI era. And people always talk about personalization, but why do we want to do personalization? Because personalization is because every brain is different. Every child coming to your class, they will come with a different prior knowledge. So I think we have to look at this adaptive learning platform, tailor content to individual needs, okay? And I think if we can also incorporate some of this cognitive skill, kind of building tools, digital platform which can offer targeted exercises for higher order thinking kind of development. And I think balanced integration is actually important, combining technology with active brain-based learning strategy for optimum kind of learning outcome. And I think in terms of implementation, of course, this is my last slide here I would like to share, is that I think, for example, we know that the brain is actually a paraprocessor. So we have to have multi-sensory kind of experiences, which can enhance actually memory and engagement, real-world problem solving, developing critical thinking, collaborative project can foster social learning and creativity. And I think in terms of assessment, this is also very, very important. I think we have to move increasingly to this so-called problem-based kind of assessment, whereby we can actually evaluate higher order thinking more effectively. So these are some of the ideas and strategy that I would like to share at this session. And thank you all for your attention. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you, Professor for your insightful and thought-provoking presentation. We have now Mr. Ampao Chew, who will talk on designing future-ready curriculum, alignment, technology, and inclusion. Mr. Ampao Chew is a senior consultant at the Principal's Academy. He is a veteran education leader with 37 years of dedicated service in Singapore's education system. He was principal of National Junior College and Victoria School. He also served as director at the Curriculum Planning and Development Division and Educational Technology Branch at the Singapore Ministry of Education. His areas of expertise include strategic school leadership, curriculum planning and development, educational technology, and teacher professional growth. Without further ado, I'll hand over the time to Mr. Ampao Chew.
Thank you, Joseph, for the kind introduction. I'm trying to figure out where I can get my slides up, so just give me a moment. I can't actually find my slides, so let me just figure out how I can do this. Yeah, I have a bit of a problem sharing the slides. Joseph, do you have my slides? Can you just share it?
Okay, just give me a moment.
Do you have them as a Google presentation or PowerPoint?
It's a PowerPoint file. So I'm trying to figure out how to put my PowerPoint file into the screen.
But I don't see it open in your tabs. Maybe you need to open PowerPoint. I
You have
don't
to
see
open
it
your
open.
PowerPoint.
Just give me. If I
Oh,
were
there.
to open,
Yeah, on the top left of your screen, you have presentation 24 hours. If you
Yes,
just
that's
double
right.
click that, if you double click there, it
left
should
of my
work.
screen
Under the recycle bin in your desktop.
on my desktop. So can I just click on that
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm.
under the Zoom? Oh, it's a
No,
Zoom
no.
background. Not that one, right?
There
I
you
just
go.
click on.
No, this one. That's
Yeah.
the one. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for helping. Let me see how. Right. So how do I therefore put the slides on?
Share.
Share,
Go
right?
to go to Zoom and share.
Oh, we
Okay,
can
thank
see
you
your
so much.
slides now. You just put to full screen mode. Yes.
Share and then full screen mode.
Activate the slide.
Can you see?
Yes, we can see the slide now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for helping me. My talk today is actually about designing future-ready curriculum, alignment, technology, and inclusion. And I think it segues very neatly from what Professor has presented. I think, as we heard earlier from our two speakers, there is a mandate for transformation of learning. And this 24-hour conference focuses on innovation, inclusion, and future of learning. We need to take the standpoint that as educators, we are not just leaders in school, we are also, importantly, architects of the future workforce and citizens. We live in a very challenging world, and the kind of work that our people will do across the world will be very different. And therefore, learning has to change. So what is the challenge that we are facing now? I think that we need to have this shift from knowing that is content, as represented by the stack of books there, to doing, about skills and dispositions. I think this was referenced by Professor earlier. And that's the reason why we are here, to figure out how to meet this particular challenge. The diagram, a scattergram on the right of the screen, is about how we can read data and how the skills that we have will allow us to learn from how, in a sense, we read the data. So what is the core problem that we face if we talk about future learning? I think the hardest alignment problem in education, and I was in this for many, many years, is to make sure that curriculum intent, pedagogy, and the final assessment all speak the same language, which is the language of skills, dispositions, and real-world competence. Many of us would know that, the alignment between curriculum intent, pedagogy, and the final assessment sometimes are not very well aligned. And we have challenges both at the implementation level and at the planning level. And sometimes teachers and the curriculum designers do not speak the same language. So what do I promise here? I would like to promise to share 3 practical technological enable strategies for the alignment, and focusing on deepening inquiry, personalization, and inclusion, which was mentioned by my 2 earlier speakers. So what is the roadmap? First, we need to align intent, moving from content to capability. Second, we need to revolutionize pedagogy, technology for inquiry and personalization, and we need to reimagine assessment. We have done that. We have been reimagining for a long time. So what is important is to leverage technology for true inclusion and feedback. So number 1 pillar is to align intent. We need to do or make this critical shift from intent and to define it. A future-ready curriculum must prioritize for the 4 C's to me: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. We must remember that technology is not the intent, but the lever to achieve the 4 C's. So intent, as represented by the diagram, is not content, right? It is what we want to do. So the action that is required is to change curriculum intent from knowing, students will know, to students will be able to do, to evaluate, to justify, and to create some of the higher order thinking skills that Professor mentioned earlier. So how do we therefore leverage tech, or tech as lever? How do we map intent to tools that we could use? So the framework is, number 1, capability. For example, critical thinking. Second is the tool. What kind of tools do we use? I think there are many available tools out there. For those of us who are not aware, there are annotation platforms like Hypothesis or Peruse All available freely online. And I think it will be important that we have to have our students use these platforms to annotate articles, to highlight biases, and to debate interpretations asynchronously. I would like to focus on annotation. Annotation is actually a metacognitive skill, which is crucial for a student to learn how to learn. If they're able to annotate, they will be able to see and understand, and as well as analyze what is written and what they have written. And a social annotation platform like Perusall and Hypothesis actually allow for annotations to take place. So the last point is alignment, right? So what the technology does as a lever is to force the students to perform the higher order thinking skills intended. If they're able to use a platform, and if they're able to teach the students to use these platforms, they will be able to, in a sense, be driven to think about their own thinking, and at the same time to perform the higher order thinking skills, which is intended. So the next point I want to make is about inclusion lens on intent, right? An inclusion lens on intent. What does that mean? Number 1, when the skill is the goal, technology can remove the access barrier. I repeat, when the skill is the goal, technology as a lever can remove the access barrier. Number 2, online spaces or global project platforms, if we give students access, will provide the opportunities for them to manage diverse perspectives, time zones, and digital communication protocols. And what does it lead to? A more collaborative competence in a global world. So there are tools already out there. It's a question of whether we are able to help our students leverage the tools to enhance their own learning. The pillar number 2, pedagogy. How do we deepen inquiry through digital scaffolding? I think one of the key focus that we need to look at is how technology can move inquiry from resource-intensive luxury to an everyday reality. This is the point about inclusion, right? I repeat, how do we move inquiry from being resource-intensive to something that can happen every day? And I can see 3 ways of doing it. 1, digital research is already out there. There's so much research being done, and this can be accessed quite easily. Data visualization, how do we help our students read and learn from data? How do we analyze data? And third, perhaps virtual field trips. Virtual field trips are easily available with the help of technology. It's also about technology-enabled personalization, right? And we talked about personalization earlier. I said inclusion dividend technology. What do we mean by inclusion dividend technology? It means every child, right, will be able to learn. It means adjusting how a child learns in terms of pace, content, and modality. Every brain is different, as mentioned by Professor And what we can do is to leverage adaptive platforms. I use Kamigo myself. Dreambox I have not used, but what I've learned from Dreambox is that all these technological tools and platforms actually enable automatic differentiation and adaptive learning paths, right? Adaptive learning paths is actually personalization. Next, there is modality choice, right? How students consume content and skills are done through screen readers and real-time translation tools. As I said, these are all available online, and generally they're accessible because most of the platforms are free for use. So this point reiterates what Professor has mentioned earlier, right? For technology to handle routine tasks, while the teachers focuses on the relational coaching, to debate with the students, and to provide feedback. Therefore, the role of the teacher must evolve and change. I repeat, to be a coach, to be able to debate with the students, and to provide relevant feedback to them. Pillar number 3, how do we reimagine assessment? I think this has already been done in some countries, in some educational systems. Assessment for learning is critical. I think many of times examinations are assessment of learning and not assessment for learning. Assessment of learning, especially final examinations, for example, the O-levels, the A-levels, provide stress on students because they have to sit for the exam, and most of our students want to do well. Unfortunately, that creates stress. Assessment for learning, on the other hand, is a process whereby the students can learn through failure, learn through improving what they could do, and learn through talking and communicating with other learners. So we have tools which provide real-time analytics for swift inclusion and inclusive intervention. For example, digital portfolios, LMS analytics in some digital platforms. So what does assessment for the future look like? I think these two words, authenticity and choice, are critical. And as Professor mentioned earlier, right, the assessment tasks for assessment for learning could include digital portfolios, performance tasks, modality choice, meaning that the student would have a choice of choosing how assessment could be done for him or her, in terms of video, in terms of a podcast, in terms of a presentation. Therefore, the design of the assessment would be very critical. So how do we close this loop for the future? I would say that intent, when it prioritizes skills, and when pedagogy provides technological scaffolds for inquiry, assessment validates diverse, authentic demonstrations, the entire system will align perfectly to foster deep, inclusive, and future-ready learning. So it's about alignment. It's about what we prioritize, content or skills. It's about how we leverage technology, and how do we conduct assessment for our learners. So my call to action for all of us is to audit our intent. Every education system, in a sense, must have a clear intent of how technology could be used for transformation alignment, to prioritize inclusion, and to ensure future capability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been 3 wonderful presentations. Thank you, Joseph, and the Principals Academy for putting together the segment. It's always a privilege to learn from the wonderful work that you do in education there in Singapore. And I think these 3 presentations were a fantastic balance of the rigorous approach, the very scientific learning focus that you have, and your passion for inclusion and well-being and and it's very refreshing to hear that. Thank you very much. We are very grateful for your time, and hopefully we will be able to promote the video so that it reaches a lot of people on the channel. Thank you. Thanks a million.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Gabriel. Thank you,
Have a
Prof.
wonderful
Thank you,
day.
Mr.
Thank you.
An.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.